now. The official BC Lions podcast is back. Matt Baker alongside Nick Kowalski broadcasting inside the Go-Goat Sports Studios. Just catching up with our friends Sakaris and Price, recording some great video promos for their own show. Love being around those guys. Nick, how are you?
Still doing well. Season's coming to an end here. A little bit of a grind these last 5 weeks, but still feeling confident and ready for these past games, or these couple of games coming up, especially against these Western opponents that are gonna be big ones coming up.
Yeah, really into crunch time now, it seems, and like I kind of forecast or said they had to do ahead of time. They get the split with Calgary, right? I mean, you want to aim higher, but here's the reality: there was 3 games each in this regular season against Calgary and Saskatchewan. After those first couple weeks, you get the blowout over Edmonton, another blowout over Toronto, eke one out in Ottawa. We'll talk lots of Red Blacks on this show today, obviously, this week. Red Blacks in town Friday night. But my feeling with those Calgary and Saskatchewan games, if you win both season series, you get 2 out of 3. And here's the kicker. All 4 of those wins against those 2 teams came in their stadiums, right?
Yeah.
2 wins in Saskatchewan, 2 wins in Calgary. Unfortunately, you're playing with house money maybe at that point. Okay, we can still get them at home and get the sweep, but the bottom line, I know Saskatchewan's struggling right now, but Calgary is still a very good football team. And I know there were some people going into that home-and-home series that were just expecting the Stamps to roll over us twice and overtake second place, and we're going to be going on the road in November. Still might be. Nothing's determined yet by any stretch, but a full credit to the Calgary Stampeders for playing a terrific football game on both sides of the ball. But Lions in a good spot here, still at 9-4, and still in control to host a playoff game.
Yeah, you said it. I mean, if you were to say earlier in the season that you'd be 9-4 at this point with the tiebreaker over Calgary and Saskatchewan, I think you would take that any day of the week. And then still an opportunity to people are kind of sleeping on this, but there's still an opportunity to have the tiebreaker for Winnipeg down the stretch here.
Lions win out, they get first.
Yeah. This team is
they get first because they will have beaten Winnipeg twice. Now that's a very tall task, but we're just laying out the scenarios.
Yeah,
folks.
If you're feeling low, this is still a team that controls its own destiny to first place in the CFL. So there's no reason to feel low, and especially I like to find the guy too. If you showed somebody the Lions schedule before the season, then they saw Calgary 3 times, Saskatchewan 3 times, and the road team would go 6-0 in those games. I like to find the guy who would have predicted that, but.
Right. Well, like I said, there were some people, our friend Danny Austin at the Calgary Herald, love the guy. He expected Calgary to roll us over twice, 2 blowouts, and didn't quite happen that way. Just kidding. I love Danny Austin, and we look forward to potentially seeing him and the Stampeders again in a playoff game down the road. Again, a top 3 position, could get first, likely going to end up second. Would take a bit of a collapse here to fall into third, because as it stands now, the Lions tied in Calgary with points, but have a game in hand and have wrapped up the season series like we talked about. So some concerning elements from that football game, though, and again, you have to credit the Calgary Stampeders, but they were very solid up front, even after losing Derek Dennis to a fractured fibula, was it? So Bone Crusher is going to be out for the rest of the season, and we wish him a speedy recovery, one of the good guys in this league. But it seemed, again, like that first matchup, this time it didn't result in the Lions surviving and getting a win, but Calgary picking up a lot of chunk yards. I mean, that Peyton Logan touchdown was kind of the dagger. He just could not be tackled, did not go down 2 or 3 times. You thought they'd stopped him in his tracks, but Calgary has a strong running game, and come playoff time, should those teams meet again, that's an area that's going to have to be focused on making some headway on the line of scrimmage. But that Lions defensive front, it has to get back to doing what it was doing, consistently getting to the quarterback, forcing the opposing quarterback into some quick throws, maybe force him into a mistake. RP's defense very much held to a high standard now because we know what they're capable of, and that's going to be a major key here against the Red Blacks.
Oh, for sure. And 0 sacks in 3 games against Calgary is not going to cut it. And they know that too. They have to be better against Calgary. They have to step up to the occasion in those games. And Even for Vernon's sake too, on the flip side, Vernon was under a lot of pressure on Saturday, and the Calgary finished with 5 sacks, I believe, in that game.
5.
And there was a couple other plays that just didn't work out. Where
Sean Lemon had 2 of them.
Yeah, where Vernon was just pulling plays and the ends were containing him. Sean Lemon, we talked about with Mark Steven how good Sean Lemon's been, and been one of the most under talked about players in the CFL this season, in terms of he's probably going to be an all-star, and Calgary could even sweep the all-star position at defensive tackle or defensive end this season too, with Ormalade having a fantastic year on the other side there. But yeah, they're a good team. They probably have the best offensive line in the league. They have the best run game in the league, and Jake Mayer is no slouch at all. Jake Mayer is a very good quarterback. Seeing him in person, he's a hard guy to catch, and he's just never making a mistake. It seems he's putting the ball in the right spot wherever it needs to be and making smart reads. So like you said, we're probably gonna see them down the road, and it's gonna be a tough challenge again. But it's a challenge that we've conquered twice already, and at that point it could be anybody's game. We're getting ahead of ourselves here, but
yeah,
down the stretch there it can be anybody's game.
Yeah, we certainly not going to look past the Ottawa REDBLACKS. The players aren't. The Lion players, after a performance like that where they come up short, fail to really gain some traction like we've discussed. You can't overlook anybody in this league at any time, but Ottawa at 3-10, kind of an interesting study. Again, one of those Eastern Division teams where after their wins, you kind of say, okay, can they build on this? And we touched on this a little bit in last week's episode. We went into Ottawa back in week 4 on June the 30th. It was our 3rd game, but we had the week 2 bye. And that was a heavyweight fight. You had the Money Hunter interceptions, Nathan Rourke. Yeah. Nathan Rourke, kind of his first bit of adversity as a starting quarterback, but he recovered from it. And that was a really good litmus test for the Lions offense. Again, those situations, short week, Saturday win here, Thursday night game there, the way the schedule went down, only 1 full week of practice. There was basically a walkthrough, or there might have been nothing on the Monday that week. Full practice Tuesday, Wednesday is your travel day. That's not easy to execute like that. You're flying east, you're losing 3 hours, guys' body clocks are all messed up, and they survived. And the long-winded point I'm making here is this Ottawa team will not be overlooked, should not be overlooked. Not sure who we're going to see at quarterback, if it's going to be Nick Arbuckle or Caleb Evans, and it's a completely different quarterback matchup no matter what.
Yeah.
Nathan Rourke and Jeremiah Mazzoli that first game, and now both of those guys obviously injured. So I'm intrigued to see how this team bounces back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for Ottawa's sake, I mean, they had a really ugly loss before us on Saturday. Yeah, so they can either at this point, I mean, they're still not out of it at 3-10, which is very CFL, but
pretty much have to run the table though, right?
But they can still get in.
Yeah,
they're 3 games back to a playoff spot right now, I believe.
I suppose you know what? I suppose the crossover is not a foregone conclusion out of the West, right?
Point,
I mean, Saskatchewan. There's a scenario this week. Actually, the league sent out the scenarios. If Saskatchewan loses, they're in Winnipeg, and Calgary wins over Toronto, Saskatchewan can just cross over. That's it. They would officially be eliminated from a top 3 position. Should they make it in at the end, if all that happens, it would be as the crossover team. So yeah, I suppose Ottawa and Hamilton not totally out of it as far as 3rd in the East even maybe. They can still catch 2nd Montreal mathematically, but that's a bit of a tall order. So yeah, they're going to be playing desperate football, those REDBLACKS.
Yeah, it's either going to be that, or we've seen them kind of lay a couple of eggs this season. So it's probably going to be one or the other. But regardless, for our sake, you got to be prepared for the best Ottawa REDBLACK team that you're going to face. And I mean, like you said earlier, this season they played us very tough, especially on defense. It wasn't a game where Mazzoli's offense had a lot of yards either. It was more so, those turnovers that they capitalized on. And Money Hunter is back in the lineup. They got Brandon Dandridge, who went to the NFL in the offseason, and he's back now. So they got some 2 good cornerbacks there. Lorenzo Molden's probably he could be the East most outstanding player at this point with 12 sacks on the season already.
Right.
That's not even that's when he might be the front runner for that position already.
Been very effective.
So yeah, you got to really look out for him. It's going to be another big test for the offensive tackles in terms of containing Molden, and defensive line's pretty solid overall too. They got some veterans there, so yeah, they're not to be taken lightly at all. Even though their record doesn't say that they've had a strong season by any means, but I'm looking for these defensive backs too on our side to get back into the turnover game too. Like Arbuckle's been throwing a lot of interceptions. Caleb Evans' whole CFL career has been throwing a lot of interceptions. So If we know anything about RP's DBs, they're going to be ball hawking on Friday night there.
TJ Lee did have one, but it was nullified because of a penalty. That kind of summed up the Lions' night in a nutshell. Penalties kind of doing them in. Jordan Williams with a horse collar. I still thought that was a borderline call on that return. That led to the Malik Henry touchdown in the second quarter, gave Calgary some nice field position. Again, that's not an excuse. They didn't execute good enough, but it just goes to show you, in a 14-point result like that one was, it still comes down to those 4 or 5 key turning point plays. Another, did you mention Devontae Dedmon?
Yeah.
That's another change. Yeah, another big change since these two teams last played each other.
Yeah, he hasn't done a whole lot, though. I'll say it.
But it's funny, though, that one game, who was it? Were they playing Montreal, and they kept trying to avoid kicking to him? Like, that's how...
No, teams have pretty much been doing that since he got back. Toronto was doing it last week. It was Edmonton, his first game, that was doing it. They are kicking away from him, but that is a way you can neutralize him.
Because and ironically, him re-signing led to Terry Williams being expendable. Yep. And I just get the sense Terry's going to break one out here at some point.
I'm hoping so too. But yeah, Ottawa, Ryan Davis has pretty much been their more so primary returner because teams are kicking to the opposite side of the field, and they've been putting Ryan Davis there. But Dedmon had a fumble last week too, so he hasn't, I'm going to jinx it here, but he hasn't necessarily had any big plays yet with the Red Blacks this season. So, but again, he's not a person to be taken lightly. We've seen what he can do in the return game in the past years.
45-15 Argo win there, and pretty much all those points were off turnovers. 42 of them.
That was an insane
I saw
stat.
that, and I'm like, I have to go back and watch this. And it's like, oh, yeah, miscue after miscue. So some special elements involved with this game. On Friday, of course, it's our Orange Shirt Day game as we recognize and respect Canada's National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. All the info on our website. We'll talk a bit before the podcast is over about some of the special events going on. A couple new elements to that game. I know you weren't here last year. Not quite going to be the same as last year, but still some very special things going on. Again, you can go to our homepage, bclions.com, as we'll talk about the big one right now quickly. The Indigenous-themed logo is going to be the helmet for the BC Lions, the logo that was designed by Kareen Hunt. So very special look for this Lions team here on Friday.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to seeing all the orange shirts and all the support for all the Indigenous cultures that we have here in Canada. And it should be a fantastic night of celebration and honor of and reconciliation too with the Every Child Matters movement that's been taking a big storm here in Canada these past couple of years. So it should be a great night on Friday.
Very special indeed. Lions and Red Blacks 7:30. Note the kickoff time. And we'll talk about the other games this week and break down a couple of the other special elements going on with Orange Shirt Day before we're done. But we're going to speak some more about the Ottawa Red Blacks, 3-10, the voice of the Ottawa Red Blacks on TSN 1200 radio in the nation's capital, longtime voice in Ottawa sports, AJ Jakubec, going to join us coming up here on First and Now. And we've tracked him down. AJ Jakubec, a fixture in the Ottawa sports radio community for years. Good friend of mine. I know Nick knows him a little bit now, too. The voice of the Red Blacks on TSN 1200 joins us. AJ, Vancouver week for you. You're always jacked up, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm always jacked up, but less jacked up this year because I'm only there one night. So I don't like leaving BC. I lived there for 4 years. It was Trail and Kelowna. It was the interior, but always loved my trips out there. Great. Always loved the vibe in the city and the province, and some great friends there as well. So this will be a shorter trip, just in Thursday night, out Friday right after the game. But looking forward to what should be, it's last chance here for Ottawa. I think they probably have to win out, or at least 4 of their last 5 if they're going to be in the mix. And for BC, obviously, a lot to play for as well, battling Calgary for that number 2 spot. So should be an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, Nick and I were kind of kicking this around off our intro. Red Blacks 3-10, not where they want to be record-wise, but not out of it by any stretch. I mean, there's still a path, although a very small one, still a path maybe for the third-place team in the East to get in. I mean, you pretty much have to win out and hope Saskatchewan keeps collapsing. So, yeah, this is going to be like a playoff game for the Red Blacks, is it not? What's the vibe there with that, AJ?
Uh, Hard to say. I mean, vibe amongst the fan base, they're not happy. They think there should have been a coaching change. So, I mean, they're terrible at home. That's the reality. They're absolutely terrible at home, and they have been for 3 seasons. They've lost 21 of their last 22 games at TD Place, which is the worst stretch of 22 games in the history of Canadian football. The next worst is 87, 88, 89 Ottawa Rough Riders, who lost 19 of 20 and 14 straight, which the Elks are trying to break. So, yeah, it's just kind of wild. Meantime, the Elks have won 4 games on the road, and Ottawa's won 3, and they've won 3 in a row away from home. So, it's the only team in the CFL since the Red Blacks came back in 2014 that has a better record away from home than at home. So, this has been story since day one, but in particular the last few years, and the fans are fed up. So I'm not sure a win in BC on Saturday night, when I think a lot of them have turned their attention to hockey season, unfortunately, is going to resonate. I don't think anything's going to resonate until they win a home game, but inside those walls, I would think there's still some faint hope that they can get things done. But even that, I mean, the questions I was asking players and the head coach is, how do you turn it around? Do you believe you can turn it around? Do you believe the team quit in the second half of the last game against Toronto? Those aren't questions I want to ask, but I think they're questions you had to ask in light of the performance against the Argonauts, where they turned the ball over 7 times. It was probably rock bottom of those 22 games or 21 losses in the last 3 seasons. Hoping it doesn't get worse than that, but you just never know in this game. So just hoping for a much better performance and a competitive football game on Friday night.
You mentioned Paul LaPolice. We've spoken with him in his role with TSN, know him a little bit just crossing paths when the teams play. Excellent guy. His head coaching record is what it is. Do you think he's coaching for his job here these final few weeks, or how do you think that shakes down?
Maybe, or it's hard to say. I mean, is it already decided at this stage, right? I mean, what's going to save his job at this stage? 5 wins in a row and a couple of playoff wins, and you go to the Grey Cup. I would say that would probably save his job, but I don't really. I think the problem, and the way I talked about this on the radio today, because I'm with you, real good guy, real good family guy, great family, great football guy too. Like I'm not going to listen to the people that say, "Oh, he was never." He was overrated as an offensive coordinator, anyways, and all this kind of stuff. Like, I feel like people like to pile on, kick people when they're down. This is one of the best minds in Canadian football the last 20 years when it comes to offense.
Yeah.
Real good offensive coordinator. Is he a real good head coach? I mean, it hasn't been the case here in Ottawa for a variety of reasons. Doesn't help that he's lost his starting quarterback, that's for sure. Probably didn't have enough talent last year, but you're 3-10 after being 3-11, and you've only won one home game in 2 years. You're just not going to get that benefit of the doubt. And I think we've reached the point where the paying public just doesn't believe in him. And I know the coaching business quite well. I've worked in this business for a long time in a lot of different sports, and just talking to the different coaches that I've talked with over the years. And it's funny, there's a hockey coach that I talked to probably within the last couple of months, and it wasn't about this, but just talking about how relieved he was when he got fired from a job a few years ago, because he knew that the tide was against him and he just wasn't going to be able to turn it around. And I feel like when the avalanche is going downhill, there's just nothing you can do, especially when it comes to public pressure. And I feel like it's going to take a miracle for him to save his job, which is, I hate saying that. It's sad. It's unfortunate because, like I said, really like Paul and think he's a good football guy. I don't know why it hasn't worked out, but it hasn't worked out. Is it because he's doing 2 roles, head coach and offensive coordinator, and he's trying to juggle? And maybe you should have 2 guys in that role. I'm sure that doesn't help, but for whatever reason, I think it's going to be a tough sell. Like you're trying to sell tickets next year, and I'm just hearing from too many people, unfortunately, that are saying they might be out. And there's the vocal minority So, and a lot of times the vocal minority gets mad at about a lot of things, but this has gone beyond the vocal minority. There are just too many people that are casual fans, or they're fans, but they're not going to be calling into a talk show or listening to a talk show. So too many of those people I'm hearing from, and other people are hearing from, and saying they're done. And would a coaching change that? I don't know, but I think it's tough from the business standpoint. And let me be clear, OSEG will not make the decision. OSEG made the decision to bring in Sean Burke, and that'll be Sean Burke's decision. But
Yeah.
that has to be, and look, you need to make those decisions based solely on football, right? There's the old line, if you start listening to the fans, soon you'll be sitting with them. But there are some times where I just think it's going to be too much to overcome. And if you go against that tide, all of a sudden you're putting yourself in a predicament where maybe you could be vulnerable, and that's the last thing you want to do. He didn't hire him. I think he's done a really good job in terms of trying to support Paul LaPolice. Like when Jeremiah Masoli went down, what did he do? Right away went out and traded for Nick Arbuckle. Tried to give them as much a chance to save the season, to help Paul LaPolice get through this. He didn't view him as a scapegoat. He's tried to work with him, I think. And so, yeah, I mean, I have a lot of respect for Sean Burke in terms of how he's handled this. It's been deeply unpopular, but they've had a couple of quarterback clubs in the community, and he's come out front and center at those quarterback clubs, even when he wasn't supposed to be there, and went and spoke to the fans and took it on the chin. So, but I think in terms of that vision, it's probably going to have to wait until next season before he truly puts a stamp on this football team. And again, barring 5 straight wins and a couple in the playoffs as well to get to the Grey Cup, I feel at this stage, putting a stamp on things will probably involve a new head coach at some point, whether it's the end of this season or whether it's in the off season. It certainly leads you to believe it's heading in that direction.
And the quarterback position has obviously been a big topic in Ottawa this season. And it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but Nick Arbuckle hasn't really worked out for them so far. But he's only looked really strong is when he's coming on spot duty or as a backup coming into the game. And even the same thing with Caleb Evans at times. I find that when they're starting, they're not really excelling, but when they're coming in when they're getting replaced by one another, then they're actually doing something on offense. But why hasn't it really worked out so far with Nick Arbuckle? I mean, he was a pretty big acquisition in the mid-season here, but it's just not there right now, right?
Yeah, I'll say this. I thought he was pretty good in his first 2 starts. They got wins in Edmonton and Montreal, and the Montreal game in particular looked really good. Came back, wasn't very good in the first half against the Argos. Much better second half. It seemed like he was sailing balls in that first half against Toronto. But much better second half, got them back into the game, and they had a chance to win on a couple of drives towards the end of the game. Last week, it was just bad all around. I mean, everyone was bad. 7 turnovers, 5 interceptions. You had a fumble, you had a turnover on downs, but both of them just weren't good enough in that game against the Argonauts. And so, I mean, it's you'd think Arbuckle's going to start in BC. He's won 2 in a row on the road, although Evans won the last one before that on the road. But I don't know. Once you start kind of going through quarterbacks back and forth, you just wonder where their confidence is at. And I'm not blaming them for making those changes, but it feels like a bit of a rudderless ship on that front. So hopefully, from an Ottawa perspective, Arbuckle can limit his turnovers. I think when he does that, he's got a good arm. He reads defenses quite well, goes through his progressions well. So he looks the part, and he looked the part in Calgary. But, it just hasn't happened for him. And you feel like this might be his last chance as a starting quarterback. He went from Calgary in that trade in the offseason to Ottawa before the 2020 season. Obviously, the COVID season didn't happen. Then the next year with restructured contracts, they didn't come to an agreement. He left. They brought in Matt Nichols, which was a mistake. Nichols' arm was shot, and he was done. And Arbuckle went to Toronto. Didn't work out there. He lost the job to McLeod Bethel Thompson. Went to Edmonton. Didn't work out there. lost the job to Taylor Cornelius, comes back to Ottawa, and now you kind of feel like he's playing for a CFL future, at least as a starting quarterback. And it's been mixed reviews. There's been some good, but obviously when you turn the ball over 7 times as an offense, and everyone's responsible for that, right? Offensive coordinator, quarterback, players, everyone. But in the end, a lot of that blame is going to go on the quarterback, and certainly Nick Arbuckle and Caleb Evans will have to be a lot better this week against a real good Lions team.
Yeah, and you just look on paper too with Ottawa and their receivers. They have a lot of talent there. I mean, Jalen Ackland's one of the best in the CFL this season. I think that's an obvious statement to make. Nate Bahar's kind of had a breakout season, and then there's the 2 speedsters, Ryan Davis and Devontae Dedmon. Is it a matter of maybe scheming up more plays that are simple to execute and get the ball in Dedmon's hands, get the ball in Davis's hand on offense, just to provide some kind of spark and maybe some plays that are less prone to turnovers for Ottawa?
I think the issue the last couple of weeks against Toronto is they didn't target Jalen Ackland enough, and certainly zone defense didn't work to their favor. I think he's a guy that is better in man defense, but in zone defense there are ways to get him the ball, and they need to find and scheme ways to get him the ball. So that is number one. Devontae Dedmon, teams aren't kicking to him, so I don't blame him for being probably a little bit frustrated that he hasn't been given much of an opportunity to do the damage that he did before getting his opportunity in the NFL with the Miami Dolphins. I'd like to see him used a little bit more on offense. He's been used a little bit on offense, but maybe they can use him a little bit more because teams are kicking away from him. So that's another possibility that can certainly help them a little bit. We'll see what they do beyond that with the receivers. Yeah, I mean, Bahar's had a good year. Certainly Ackland's amongst the best in the league. Darvin Adams has been pretty good for the most part, but he's had some key drops. One in Montreal, which would have been a touchdown that put them within 1. I guess they could have gone for 2 or tied it and gone to overtime, but there have been a couple of key drops like that at inopportune times. So yeah, I think they've got the weapons. I think the offensive line has been good, but yeah, it's just week to week there's not enough consistency, and I don't think there's any doubt. It starts with the quarterback and the play caller, and hopefully that is going to be something that's going to be a little more consistent this week in Vancouver.
AJ, we've talked about the current Red Blacks head coach, Paul LaPolice. How about the former Red Blacks head coach, Rick Campbell? I know you know him very well. We've gotten to know him very well. How much did you enjoy dealing with Rick all those years there? First head coach in Red Blacks history and a Grey Cup champion there, of course.
One of my favorites. Yeah, love Rick. Just a great human being and really good head coach. Obviously, Ottawa will forever be grateful for the fact that he won a Grey Cup there for the first time in 40 years in 2016, and some real good seasons. I mean, people talk about an 8-9-1 Grey Cup champion. They won 43 games in 4 seasons from 2015 to 2018. The first year was expansion, and 2019 obviously didn't go his way as well, which led to his departure. But a lot of great memories, the best 4-year span in my lifetime of Ottawa pro football. And I'm old enough to remember the dynasty growing up in Edmonton of the old school Eskimos before they changed the name with Warren Moon and Jim Germany and Dave Fennell and that group. So yeah, it's been a long time coming, or it had been a long time coming for this market. But Rick just set the tone and the culture for that dressing room, and the guys just love playing for him. He cares about people as people, players as people, and I think that's why, even though he's not going to give you maybe a Newt Rockne type speech that's going to get guys running through a wall for him, they'll run through a wall for him because they know that A, he cares about them as people, and B, he's going to have them prepared to win football games and have success and put them in positions to have success and win football games. So, yeah, not surprised that He's had some success this season in BC. I think it would be a lot more, obviously, if Nathan Rourke didn't go down, which is unfortunate because must-see TV every week for me. It was, okay, when's Ottawa playing? All right, I know I'm working that game. When's BC playing? Because I got to make sure I'm watching that one, and the rest of my schedule I'd work around the weekend and try and fit in some CFL where I could beyond that. But wasn't missing BC Lion games early in the season because of that. So, no, I'm happy for his success. Great human being, and no doubt he's going to have a long career, and he's already had a long career in the CFL, just as a coach, but as a head coach, I have no doubt he's going to be there for a long time.
Very well said, my friend. Hey, always love catching up with you. Glad we've stayed in touch over the years in our various roles. You've had your role for a long time, and I've switched roles since we first started talking football and sports. But it's awesome, and hey, make the most out of your time here. I know it's only 36 hours, whatever it is, but we'll be catching up with you later this week.
Yeah, there's too many spots that I like to hit in that short period of time, but I'll try and hit a couple of them. Always look forward to my trips to BC. It's always great catching up with you guys, and looking forward to what should be a great football game on Friday.
Well said, my friend. We'll see you this week.
Thanks for coming on, AJ.
AJ Jakubec from TSN 1200, the longtime play-by-play voice of the Red Blacks since their inception, does some Senators coverage too. You heard him. He goes back as a fan, at least as a kid, to those Edmonton Grey Cup dynasty teams in the 80s. Of course, Rick Campbell's father, Hugh, the man in charge of those teams. And I agree with him, Coach Rick, awesome guy to be around. We're not just saying that because we're employees. He really is a solid football coach and a cool guy to be around. So, and he kind of echoed what we were saying, the Red Blacks going to play some desperate football here on Friday night.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was kind of a negative conversation regarding the Ottawa Red Blacks in terms of their season, but they are 3-10, and
I mean, you can't. That's a rarity now. He's not a team employee. He's an employee of the. I know it's rare now to hear.
Yeah.
So, and hey, that's good. I'm a broadcaster at heart. I understand. No matter what position you're in, you have to frame it, however you frame it. So, not much to sugarcoat at 3-10, and the way they lost that game to Toronto. Again, we don't want to rehash that because we hit on it at the start, but.
You see all those interceptions?
It is hard to be. It is hard to be positive. So, the Red Blacks again. They gave the Lions a tough matchup there. Again, a long time ago, they had Jeremiah Masoli, and they had a defense that was pretty stout that night. But the Lions prevailed, and it's going to be a completely different quarterback matchup altogether. Again, you heard AJ say he expects it to be Nick Arbuckle, who's won some games on the road. Ottawa, like Edmonton, they could get results on the road, can't win at home to save their life. So Friday, 7:30, and we want to talk about it. It's our Orange Shirt Day game. First 10,000 fans will receive the Every Child Matters t-shirt with the Kareem Hunt logo on it. Very sharp. Lions will wear the logo on the helmet as well for this game, special game. 350 tickets at least being provided to survivors of residential schools and their families. New for this year, there's going to be some Indigenous vendors being allowed to sell their various products on the concourse. Again, more of this can be found bclions.com. So very cool initiative for an Indigenous vendor marketplace. Props to the likes of Jamie Terrace and George Chaika for really spearheading this moment, allowing us the chance to recognize and respect Canada's National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And I know you've seen the shirts. You're going to wear your shirt. I'll wear my shirt on the sidelines. Going to be a very special night.
Big time, yeah. And you said it with Jamie and George. They're really spearheading this, and actions speak louder than words. And it's even before I joined this organization, to see what was done last year in terms of making this a special day for Indigenous cultures and honoring all of this with the Orange Shirt Day narrative and the Every Child Matters and like the Indigenous vendors now too. It's going to be a very special day, and we've also been working on something in our department pretty special that's going to be releasing on September 30th too. In terms
yes.
In terms of a video featuring some residential school survivors and focusing on a theme of sport as medicine. So myself and Liam Thompson have been our social media /video /Swiss Army knife guy. He's we've been working quite hard on this project. So there's more to come to that. I'm going to be happy to share on September 30th.
Yeah, good on you and Liam for doing all of that. I know it's not just this week we prepare all this. Like, important projects like this have been dating back a month.
Oh yeah,
it seems so. Yeah, Liam, he's kind of the ghost of our department. Nobody sees him. Nobody listening to this podcast will see him or hear from him, but he does lots of important good work.
He's getting his credit online.
Oh, yeah.
It's nice to see.
The mic'd up segments, we have a James Butler mic'd up from practice. That's Liam's project.
Liam, yeah,
all the way.
Liam. All those cool Instagram stories that people are clicking through and all the graphics and carousels with the photos and videos, that's all him too. So he's been a very big help and doing a solid job so far.
So Lions and Red Blacks, the second game of the week. It's interesting. It's the 5 o'clock, 7:30 doubleheader on Friday. 5 o'clock, Winnipeg, home to Saskatchewan. The Blue Bombers should be a snarly bunch. They get blown out in Hamilton. Then they have a bye week to sort of think about it. And Saskatchewan, we talked about it, all kinds of problems right now. Again, there's a scenario this week where they could be out as far as a top 3 spot in the West. If they lose and Calgary wins against Toronto, then they're guaranteed a crossover or nothing. Even that wouldn't be locked up yet. So do you see any scenario where the Rough Riders go into Winnipeg and win? I can't, personally. But
I was going to say yes, but I just was scrolling my Twitter this afternoon and I saw that Frankie Hickson suffered a fractured wrist and is not playing. So that's going to be a big loss for him because he was running hard against us. He was running hard against Winnipeg. So
Shaq Cooper now, right?
I guess he's next man up. Yeah.
I saw a tweet from Michael Ball, their radio play-by-play guy, saying Shaq Cooper, the former Lion, would be the next man up.
I thought the Riders played a really good game there in Regina against Winnipeg though, and they ultimately kind of fed Winnipeg that win at the end.
Came out firing, yeah.
So there's a world where I think the Riders, if they can walk the fine line of being physical enough to control the game, but not taking too many penalties because of that physicality, I think there's a world where they can pull off the upset and climb back toward 500. But Winnipeg with a bye week too. It could be scary for the Riders.
Hey, we've been fooled before on this podcast. 5 o'clock Pacific, the Banjo Bowl rematch. Again, these rematches too close to the traditional meetings. Not a big fan of it, but we shall see. Winnipeg home to Saskatchewan. Lions, Red Blacks again, 7:30. Then we back to the doubleheader on Saturday. Back to a 4-game week. I love it.
Yeah.
Asked it many times, Nick. Can the Edmonton Elks win at home for the first time since 2019? That's another team coming off a bye. Got the win in Saskatchewan. We were watching that game the night before in Calgary, a couple Fridays ago. Have a feeling maybe Edmonton could be on a mini run here before the season ends. I'm not expecting them to end up with a playoff spot. Lots of work to be done there, but they have a running back they've found now, it seems. Quarterback play been a little bit better with Taylor Cornelius. Ferocious defense, as always, under Chris Jones. Keep an eye on the Elks at home against Montreal.
I'm taking Montreal.
Okay. I'll go Edmonton just for the sake of argument.
Okay.
Why not?
Okay, we'll revisit this in a week. But I like what Montreal has been doing recently. We saw them play a pretty darn good game against us. Trevor Harris is quietly having a really good season lately.
Very good.
Quietly, yeah. And Eugene Lewis is past the 1,000-yard mark right now. You could argue he's the best receiver in the CFL. They made some nice trades. They've made a lot of trades with Edmonton actually too. So they got some like Nephius Lyon and Costigan are going to be playing on defense against their former team. So I bet they'll be jacked up for that. But Montreal's been good. They haven't been. I believe their penalties are somewhat down. They haven't really been shooting themselves in the foot lately, which was kind of a problem earlier. And they've just been playing good sound football. So I like what they're doing. Seems like William Stanback's going to be coming back soon as well, too. Maybe not this game.
They expect him back at some point in the next month or so, couple weeks.
They're running the ball well without him, regardless. With Fletcher and Antwi, they're still running the ball well. So I think, this could be a shootout, in my opinion. I think both defenses could, because I like Edmonton's offense, like you've been saying, with the new running back Kevin Brown and Cornelius has been playing well, but I think Montreal is going to get the better of Edmonton's defense, in my opinion.
Means a lot for Montreal. They have a bit of a cushion on second in the East and first in the East within reach, because we shall see. Toronto goes into Calgary. So if Montreal pulls that one out and Toronto drops a decision in Calgary, all of a sudden it's just a 2-point lead for Toronto. It seemed like a foregone conclusion lately that they're going to be first in the East, but we'll see how this week shakes down. Now, the Stampeders are going to be motivated after their solid performance here at BC Place. So that's an intriguing one for me to wrap up the week. Toronto
Big
at
time.
McMahon.
Oh, big time, yeah. We talked about it earlier with Calgary, that they're a good football team. They're a really good football team. And I think the average CFL fan knows that Calgary is a really good football team.
Balanced football team, too.
But Toronto, they've kind of been forgotten about, in my opinion. They've kind of just been cruising along in first place in the East. They're all but likely to get a home playoff game to winner goes to the Grey Cup. So they have their path made out for them pretty well. But they haven't had a big challenge lately. It feels like they've been playing a lot of Eastern teams lately. I remember when they came here and we beat them 44-3. That feels like seasons ago.
Yeah.
But they laid an egg the last time they came out
June 25th.
west. Yeah. They played nothing like themselves when they came out west. So they have another time here coming out west. See how they can play. They played Winnipeg pretty close. They have 2 wins over Saskatchewan. So just based off those performances, it shows that they're a team that's for real. But this is going to be their ultimate test and their biggest one so far this year.
Kind of a big moment for McLeod Bethel Thompson. That's a debate going around right now. Is that a guy you could build your team around? He keeps winning football games, so you can't take that away from him. But going into this situation in Calgary against a solid quarterback in Jake Mayer and a good defense, that's a kind of a statement for him and the Argos here.
Oh, big time. And I believe they squeaked one out there in 2019, right? Last time they were there? Or 2021, sorry, that would have been.
They did.
The season opener.
Week 1.
Yeah.
Because then we went into Calgary and beat them with Jalen Edwards-Cooper and all those interceptions. So Calgary started 0-2 last year, both at home.
So they're another team that's went into McMahon and beat them recently in terms of their last visit. But
anyone can beat anyone on any given day in this league. That's why we love it so much. Great stuff. Thank you to AJ Jakubec again for joining us. It's crunch time. Love crunch time in the CFLC. We're recording this early evening on Monday. It's almost 5 o'clock, and it's kind of getting a little tinted out there. The sun's going down already.
Still warm, though.
Still warm, but fall is in the air, and that means it's crunch time. We love crunch time. At First and Now on Twitter, whatever platform you're listening on, subscribe, rate, and review. Leave us a review. We're open to any sort of feedback on here. You get the interesting feedback once in a while. Means people are listening. That's good. He is at Nick_Kowalski. No C, just a K.
Correct.
I'm at BakesTakes84. BCLions.com. All kinds of ticketing options for Friday. Youth 17 and under get in for just $10. Find a better sporting deal in this city. I dare you. That's a challenge. You won't.
There's a lot of entertaining things going on at BC
Place,
too. We didn't even talk about Josh Pearson, actually. I know you're going to do the outro here, but we didn't even talk about our wide receiver singing the national anthem at our game last Saturday. Yeah,
everyone loved it. Well, almost everyone loved it. Not everyone loved it.
I'd say it was a big hit.
99%. We loved it. And
overwhelming hit.
We had more social media reaction. We never get social media reaction to the national anthem. This time we did, and it was all positive.
And to tease this too, Liam, the social media Swiss Army knife guy we were teasing or talking about earlier, I'm going to tease this, but he was pretty much following him all week and documenting the behind the scenes of how this all came to be, and Josh practicing, learning the words, all of that. So that's another
very fun
piece of content that's going to be dropping in the future on BCLions.com.
Thanks for the reminder. Are we good now? We can go now? Anything else? No, thanks for the reminder, and props to Josh Pearson. You might just have found your post-football calling. Love it. First and Now, we'll be back next week. I was saying youth and under, 17 and under, get $10 tickets, accompanying parents $25. All kinds of options. Our Truly Den, sideline club seats if you want to be up close to the action, if you want to get Nick Kowalski's autograph. That option is there for you as well. First and Now will return next week.